Look, I'm about to tell you something that's gonna sound absolutely insane, but I need you to hear me out because everyone's acting like I'm some kind of monster, and honestly, I'm starting to lose my mind over this whole thing. I'm Claire. I'm 51, and up until 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life. Like, seriously perfect. 33 years of marriage to the same man, 3 amazing kids who are all grown up and doing their own thing, nice house in a decent neighborhood, the whole suburban dream package. My husband got this ancestry DNA kit for his birthday from our youngest, and we all thought it would be fun to do it together as a family. You know how those things work, find out if you're part Irish or whatever, maybe discover some long-lost relatives, harmless family bonding time, right? Wrong. So incredibly wrong. I should probably back up and give you some context about our family dynamic. My husband, he's always been the quiet type, you know? The kind of guy who goes to work every day, comes home, watches his shows, doesn't cause any drama. Honestly, sometimes I felt like I was married to a piece of furniture. Not that I'm complaining, steady is good, right? But between you and me, there were times over the years where I felt like I was doing all the emotional heavy lifting in our relationship, planning every family event, managing our social calendar, making sure we looked good as a couple. He just coasted along while I kept everything running smoothly. Our kids are great though. 2 daughters, 29 and 26, and our son who just turned 22. The girls both live in the city now doing their career thing, and our son's still figuring out what he wants to do with his life. Normal family stuff. They've always been daddy's girls though, which used to annoy me a little, if I'm being honest. Like, I'm the one who handled all their school stuff, their friend drama, their everything, but somehow he's the hero who gets all the credit for being the fun parent. Whatever. That's ancient history now. So anyway, we all did these DNA tests, thinking it would be this cute family project. My husband was especially excited because he never knew his biological father. His mom remarried when he was little, and that's the only dad he ever knew. He thought maybe the test would give him some answers about that side of his family. Sweet, right? God, if we had known what was coming, we would have thrown those stupid kits in the trash. The results took about 6 weeks to come back, and the kids got theirs first. I remember they were all gathered around one of their laptops in our living room, comparing their results and laughing about random percentages of this and that ethnicity. I was in the kitchen making dinner, half listening to their chatter, when everything went quiet, like, dead silent. That's when I knew something was very, very wrong. I walked into the living room, and all 3 of them were staring at the computer screen with these weird expressions on their faces. My stomach started doing flips because I could tell by the way they were looking at each other that they had discovered something they weren't supposed to know. My oldest daughter looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Like she was seeing me for the first time and didn't like what she was looking at. That's when she told me the DNA results showed that she and her sister weren't genetically related to their father at all. 0 shared DNA between them and him. Our son matched perfectly. But the girls? Nothing. They might as well have been complete strangers based on those results. I literally felt the floor drop out from under me. Everything started spinning and I couldn't breathe properly. All I could think was that this wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. We were supposed to find out we were part Scottish or something fun like that, not blow up our entire family with one stupid test that nobody needed to take in the first place. The kids were all staring at me, waiting for some kind of explanation. And I just stood there like an idiot with my mouth hanging open. What was I supposed to say? How do you explain something like that? So I did what any normal person would do. I screamed and ran to my bedroom and locked the door. I know how that sounds, but you have to understand, I was in complete shock. This was supposed to be our little family science experiment, not some kind of episode of a daytime talk show. I needed time to think, to figure out how to handle this situation without destroying everything we'd built together as a family. Because here's the thing nobody seems to understand. I never wanted anyone to get hurt by this ever. I stayed locked in that bedroom for 2 hours, and let me tell you, those were the longest 2 hours of my entire life. I kept hoping maybe I'd heard wrong, maybe there was some kind of mistake with the test results, maybe this was all just a bad dream I was going to wake up from, but deep down I knew exactly what those results meant, and I knew I was about to have to confess to something I thought I'd never have to talk about again. The whole time I'm sitting on my bed trying not to hyperventilate, I kept thinking about how unfair this whole situation was. Like, why now? Why after all these years of having a perfectly good family and a perfectly good marriage did this have to come out? Nobody was getting hurt by not knowing. The girls love their dad, he loves them, we've been happy. What's the point of destroying all that over something that happened when I was barely 30 years old? But I could hear them all talking in the living room, and I knew there was no way around this. I had to come clean about everything, even though every part of me wanted to just pack a bag and disappear forever rather than face what was coming next. So I finally unlocked the door and walked back out there. All four of them were sitting around the kitchen table looking like they were waiting for a funeral to start. My husband had this expression on his face that I'd never seen before, not angry exactly, but completely blank, like somebody had just told him everything he thought he knew about his life was a lie. Which, to be fair, was pretty much exactly what had just happened. I sat down at the table and took a deep breath. There was no good way to do this, so I just started talking. I told them about Marcus. He used to live 3 houses down from us. Back when we first moved to this neighborhood, nice guy, friendly, the kind of neighbor who'd help you move furniture or jump your car battery if you needed it. He and my husband actually got along really well. They'd hang out in the garage working on projects, watch games together, normal guy stuff. The affair started about 4 years into our marriage. I don't even remember exactly how it began, just that it did. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were meeting up whenever we could find time alone. My husband was working long hours back then, trying to establish himself in his career, and I was home with a toddler and feeling pretty isolated and lonely. Marcus was just there, available and interested in paying attention to me in a way that felt good. It went on for 4 years. 4 years of sneaking around, making excuses, living this double life that honestly became almost normal after a while. The girls were both born during that time, and yes, I knew there was a chance they might not be my husband's biological children, but I also knew there was a chance they were. It wasn't like I was keeping track of dates or anything scientific like that. I was just living my life and hoping for the best. The affair ended when Marcus got a job transfer and moved across the country. No dramatic breakup, no big emotional scene, he just left, and that was that. I decided it was a sign that I should focus on my marriage and my family, so that's what I did. I threw myself into being the best wife and mother I could be, and honestly I think I succeeded. We had good years after that, really good years. I never told anyone about any of this, because what would have been the point? Marcus was gone, it was over, and bringing it up would have just hurt people unnecessarily. My husband didn't need to know, the girls didn't need to know, nobody needed to know. Some things are better left buried, But sitting at that kitchen table with all of them staring at me, I had to explain all of this. I had to watch my husband's face change as he realized that 2 of the children he'd raised from birth, 2 of the people he loved most in the world, weren't actually his biological daughters. I had to watch my girls process the fact that the man they'd called dad their entire lives wasn't their real father. The whole time I'm talking, I kept emphasizing how much I loved all of them, how the affair didn't mean anything compared to our family, how I'd chosen to end it and focus on what really mattered. I told them about all the wonderful years we'd had together, all the memories we'd made, all the love we'd shared. None of that was fake or meaningless just because of some biology results. I also made sure to mention that Marcus had died a few years ago, so it wasn't like this was going to complicate things by having him suddenly show up wanting to be involved in the girls' lives. That chapter was completely closed. My husband just sat there the entire time, not saying a word. The girls were crying, our son looked like he was in shock, and I felt like I was talking to a room full of strangers instead of my own family. By the time I finished explaining everything, I was crying too, begging them to understand that this didn't change anything about how much I loved them or how good our life together had been. But looking at their faces, I could tell that as far as they were concerned, everything had already changed. After I finished explaining everything, the silence in that room was deafening. Nobody knew what to say, nobody knew how to react, and honestly, I was starting to get a little frustrated with how everyone was acting like this was the end of the world or something. My husband finally spoke, and his voice sounded different somehow. Flat and cold in a way I'd never heard before. He asked me if I was sure the girls weren't his, and I had to explain that yes, based on the DNA results, I was sure. He asked me how long I'd suspected this might be the case. And I told him the truth, that I'd always known it was a possibility but had hoped it wouldn't matter. That's when he really lost it, not screaming or yelling, which honestly might have been easier to deal with, but this quiet kind of fury that was way more terrifying. He started asking me all these questions about the timeline, about specific dates and events, trying to piece together exactly when everything happened and how long I'd been lying to him, and that's where I think he was being completely unfair, because I wasn't lying exactly. I was just not bringing up something that didn't need to be brought up. There's a difference between actively deceiving someone and just not volunteering information that's going to hurt them unnecessarily. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Sit him down one day and say, hey, just so you know, there's a chance 2 of our kids aren't actually yours biologically, but don't worry about it because I love you and we're happy? That would have been cruel. The girls kept looking back and forth between me and their dad, and I could tell they were trying to process everything. My oldest daughter asked me if I ever planned to tell them the truth, and I explained that I hadn't seen the point in disrupting everyone's happiness over something that happened so long ago. She got this look on her face, like she thought I was being selfish. Which really hurt because everything I did was to protect this family. Our son was just sitting there not saying anything, and I could tell he was feeling weird about being the only one who was definitely his father's biological child. I tried to reassure him that this didn't change anything about how we felt about his sisters, that biology doesn't determine love, but he seemed pretty shaken up by the whole thing. The worst part was watching my husband's reaction though. Kept asking me questions about Marcus, about what our relationship was like, about why I stayed with him for 4 years if it didn't mean anything. I tried to explain that it was complicated. That I was young and confused and going through a difficult time in our marriage, but he wasn't interested in hearing about the context or the circumstances that led to everything. He also kept fixating on the timeline, trying to figure out exactly when each of the girls was conceived and whether there was any chance they could still be his biological children. I had to keep explaining that based on the DNA results, there was no chance, and I could see him getting more and more devastated every time I confirmed it. Then he started asking me about other things, whether there had been other affairs, whether anything else about our marriage was a lie, whether he could trust anything I'd ever told him. That's when I started getting defensive, because he was acting like I was some kind of serial cheater or pathological liar when this was literally one situation from decades ago that I'd handled the best way I knew how. I reminded him about all the good years we'd had together, all the ways I'd been a devoted wife and mother, all the times I'd supported him and put our family first. I told him about how I'd ended the affair on my own because I realized what really mattered to me. I explained that keeping this information private had been about protecting everyone, not about being deceptive or manipulative. But he wasn't hearing any of it. He kept acting like everything good about our marriage was somehow fake now. Like 33 years of building a life together meant nothing because of something that happened in the first few years when we were both still figuring out how to be married. The girls tried to reassure him that he was still their father no matter what, that they loved him, and this didn't change anything about their relationship with him. I was grateful for that because at least someone in the room was being reasonable about the situation. But even their support didn't seem to help him process what he was feeling. By the end of the night, he told me he needed me to leave for a while so he could think, just like that. After 33 years of marriage, I was supposed to pack a bag and go stay somewhere else because he couldn't handle the truth about something that happened before most people even owned cell phones. I asked him how long he needed and he said he didn't know. I asked him if we could talk about this in counseling and he said maybe eventually but not right now. I asked him what I was supposed to tell people about why I was suddenly staying at my sister's house and he said that was my problem to figure out. So that's how I ended up loading a suitcase into my car at 10 o'clock at night, driving across town to my sister's place, trying to explain to her why my husband had kicked me out of my own house over something that happened literally decades ago. The whole situation felt completely surreal and totally unfair. Living at my sister Beth's house has been absolutely miserable and honestly, I'm getting tired of everyone acting like I'm the only one who did anything wrong in this situation. Beth keeps giving me these looks like she's disappointed in me, which is rich coming from someone who's been divorced twice and can't keep a relationship together for more than 2 years, but the worst part is how my husband is handling all of this. I've tried calling him, texting him, showing up at the house to talk and he acts like I'm some kind of stranger he doesn't want to deal with. When I do manage to get him on the phone, he's cold and distant and acts like everything I say is some kind of manipulation attempt. What really gets me is how everyone's reacting like this affair was some kind of ongoing betrayal instead of something that ended decades ago. I've been faithful to my husband for almost 30 years since Marcus moved away. 30 years, but apparently that doesn't count for anything because of something that happened when I was barely out of my 20s. And can we talk about how my husband was back then? Because everyone's painting him as this perfect victim. But the truth is he was hardly around during those early years of our marriage. He was always working late, always tired when he got home, always too busy or stressed to pay attention to what I needed as his wife. I was home alone with a toddler. Most of the time, feeling isolated and unappreciated. And when Marcus started paying attention to me and making me feel valued, it felt like what I deserved. I'm not saying the affair was right, but context matters. I wasn't some cheating wife sneaking around for fun. I was a lonely woman whose husband wasn't meeting her emotional needs, and I found comfort with someone who actually seemed to care about me as a person. The fact that it lasted 4 years should tell you something about how neglected I was feeling in my marriage during that time. But try explaining that to anyone now, and they act like I'm making excuses instead of providing important context for my decisions. My sister keeps telling me I need to take accountability for what I did, but what does that even mean? I ended the affair, I focused on my family. I've been a good wife and mother for 3 decades since then. How much more accountable can I be? The really frustrating part is watching how my husband is getting all this sympathy from everyone, while I'm being treated like some kind of pariah. Our mutual friends keep reaching out to him to check on how he's doing, bringing him casseroles and offering to help with yard work or whatever. Meanwhile, I'm living in my sister's guest room, being lectured about honesty and commit by people who have no idea what it's like to be in a long-term marriage. He's also been meeting with some therapist, which honestly feels like another way to avoid dealing with our problems together. Every time I suggest couples counseling, he says he's not ready for that yet, and needs to process his own feelings first. But how long is that supposed to take? It's been 3 months already, and if anything he seems to be getting more distant instead of working toward forgiveness. I've been trying everything I can think of to fix this situation, but my husband seems determined to stay stuck in his anger instead of moving forward like a mature adult. It's like he's decided that being the victim is more important to him than saving our marriage, and honestly, it's starting to make me wonder if this is really the man I thought I married. Last month I suggested we go to marriage counseling together, and he said he wasn't ready. I offered to write him a letter explaining everything from my perspective so he could read it when he felt prepared to hear it, and he said he didn't want to read anything from me right now. I even reached out to our pastor to see if he could mediate a conversation between us, and my husband told him he appreciated the offer but needed more time to think. How much time does one person need to think about something? We're talking about decades-old history here, not some ongoing situation that needs to be figured out. The affair is over, Marcus is dead, our kids are adults who love their father regardless of biology, and we have a whole life together that's worth preserving. But apparently none of that matters as much as his need to punish me for something I can't change. The worst part is how he's been handling things with our social circle. Word has gotten out about our separation because obviously people notice when a married couple stops appearing places together, and the way he's been discussing our situation makes me sound like some kind of monster. I found out from Beth that he told our neighbor Karen the whole story, and now she's been giving me dirty looks when I drive through the neighborhood. He also apparently told his brother everything because now his whole side of the family has been treating me differently. His sister used to text me regularly, and now I'm lucky if I get a response when I reach out to her. It's like he's systematically turning everyone against me instead of trying to work through our problems privately like mature married adults do. Meanwhile, our kids are getting tired of being caught in the middle of this drama. My youngest actually told me last week that maybe I should consider giving Dad more space because he's really struggling with trust issues. Trust issues? After 30 years of faithful marriage following one mistake from when I was practically a child. But here's what really gets me. I've been watching him from a distance, and he seems to be doing just fine without me. Better than fine. Actually. He's lost weight, he's been more social, he's picked up new hobbies, and according to our mutual friends he seems more relaxed and happier than he's been in years. So much for being devastated and needing time to heal, right? It's almost like this whole situation has given him an excuse to end our marriage without having to take any responsibility for his own role in our problems. Because let's be honest, our marriage hasn't been perfect for a long time. We've been going through the motions for years, more like roommates than husband and wife, and maybe this DNA test thing just gave him a reason to blow everything up instead of doing the hard work of reconnecting with each other. Well, it's been 6 months now since this whole nightmare started, and I have to say, the way things have turned out is absolutely not what I expected or deserved. My husband filed for divorce 3 months ago, and apparently he's been planning this whole thing a lot more carefully than I gave him credit for. Turns out all that thinking time he needed was actually time to meet with lawyers and financial advisors and figure out how to completely screw me over. The divorce proceedings have been brutal, and not just financially. He hired some shark of an attorney who's been digging into every aspect of our marriage, trying to paint me as this deceitful, manipulative person who can't be trusted. They've been requesting bank records, phone records, social media, history, everything they can think of to build a case that I've been dishonest about other things too, and the crazy thing is, they actually found stuff. Not affairs or anything like that, because I've been completely faithful since Marcus, but little things I'd forgotten about. Like how I opened a credit card a few years ago and didn't tell him about it right away, or how I'd sometimes tell him I was going to lunch with girlfriends when I was actually going shopping by myself, normal stuff that every married person does. But now it's all being used as evidence that I'm fundamentally deceptive. The worst part is how our kids have been reacting to all this. At first, they were trying to stay neutral and maintain relationships with both of us, but as more details have come out during the divorce process, they've been pulling away from me. My oldest daughter actually told me she's disappointed in how I've handled everything and thinks I should have been more honest from the beginning, but apparently my perspective on the situation doesn't matter to anyone. Even Beth has been making comments about how I need to own my mistakes and accept responsibility for the consequences of my choices. Easy for her to say when she's never had to navigate a complicated marriage or make difficult decisions about what information to share and what to keep private. The really infuriating part is watching how everyone has been treating my husband throughout this whole process. He's gotten so much sympathy and support, like he's some kind of saint who was married to a monster for 33 years. People have been bringing him meals, inviting him to social events, checking on his well-being, while I've been basically ostracized from our entire social circle. Last month, I found out that he's been seeing some woman he met through his hiking group, apparently. When I confronted him about it, he had the nerve to tell me that it wasn't any of my business what he did with his personal life since we were separated. But the divorce isn't even final yet, and he's already moved on like our entire marriage meant nothing to him. The woman is younger than me, of course, probably never been married, definitely doesn't have kids, and from what I've heard, she thinks his whole starting over after betrayal story is incredibly romantic. She has no idea what it's actually like to be married for decades, to navigate the complexities of raising children and managing a household and keeping a relationship together through all the challenges that life throws at you. 2 weeks ago, I was at the grocery store when I saw them together, him and his new girlfriend, laughing and holding hands like teenagers, looking happier than I'd seen him look in years. He saw me too, and for just a second, our eyes met across the produce section. I expected to see some kind of recognition there, some acknowledgement of everything we'd shared together, some hint of sadness about how things had turned out. Instead, he just looked right through me like I was a complete stranger, then turned back to his girlfriend and said something that made her laugh. That's when it really hit me that this was actually over, not just the marriage, but any chance of salvaging anything positive from 33 years of building a life together. He'd completely written me off, erased me from his story, and moved on like I'd never mattered to him at all, standing there in that grocery store, watching my husband start a new chapter of his life with someone who would never understand what we'd been through together. I realized that maybe I'd been wrong about a lot of things. Maybe the affair had mattered more than I thought it did. Maybe keeping it secret for all those years had been a bigger betrayal than I understood, but even now, even seeing how everything has turned out, I still don't know what I was supposed to do differently. I still think that sometimes, protecting the people you love means keeping painful truths to yourself. I still believe that 30 years of faithful marriage should count for something, even if it was built on a foundation that wasn't completely honest. The problem is, none of that matters anymore. Because while I was trying to protect everyone from the truth, he was falling in love with someone else's version of honesty, and now I'm the one who has to live with the consequences of choices I made when I was too young to understand what they would cost me decades later.